It's me, your daddy, Roberto.
Me a boy's name that starts with the letter H. Jose.
Now look at me now. How far we go back? Elementary, jump rope, hide and go seek, pity pat, red light, green light, red light, green light.
When you just talk about practice, we sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. Talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice. We talking about practice, man. But we talking about practice right now. We talking about practice.
You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game.
You are tuned into Straight Bet Sports on the Gorilla Cross Radio Network.
Straight Bet Sports. My name is Brad Restituto, filling in for Jose V and Rob G as they're taking off for the new year. We got a great show in store for you today. We're live at the Gorilla Cross Studios in beautiful downtown Las Vegas. My main man Quan behind the ones and twos taking good care of us today. Heavy NFL talk at the beginning, and we're going to get started right off with it. Former NFL head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, 11-year NFL veteran. He's now residing back in the Seattle area, I believe. Former head football coach Mike Tice joined us. Coach, thanks for a little bit of time. And tell the audience a little real quick. I checked out your man cave over there. It's pretty sweet. Is that strictly a studio for you to do your podcast, which you can see on YouTube? It's called Odds and Ends with you, Coach Tice.
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me on, man.
Appreciate it. Tell us about that man cave back there. I see the whole. I see the ponies.
You notice I put the purple lights in the background for you too, man.
Ah, man.
I had to take care of my Vikings people. Yeah, well, I mess around with a little podcast, and I started out with an audio podcast last year, and then turned it into just picking some games each week. Got a small group of people that follow me on YouTube, mostly friends and acquaintances, guys that like to maybe throw down and put a little wager on a game. And I pick 5 games a week with the spread, and I'm having fun doing it. It keeps me engaged in the league, Brad.
Coach, you got a pretty decent record this year, but right before we started the show and walked into the studio, I told some of the guys that did the show before that you were coming in, and they acted like they knew you. They said that you've been out to Vegas a few times for some I don't know what exactly, but I told them I would ask about it. Tell us about have you spent a little time here in Vegas, because we'd love to have you back out once this COVID stuff passes over.
Well, we love Vegas, my wife Diane and I, and we started going there a little more regularly once I retired 3 years ago. My son Nathan lives in Vegas, and he's opened up a State Farm agency. He was in the NFL as a scout and a player. He also has a podcast on The Athletic with Robert Mays each week called The NFL, and they wrap up each week. So, we come in there to see my son, but we also go in there to play a little slots, and I like the ponies, so I like to sit in the sports book and play the horses.
Well, now that I know this inside info, Coach, yeah, your son Nate played a little quarterback at Wisconsin, has had his toe dipped in the NFL a little bit, so I'm going to track him down here in Vegas and maybe switch my life insurance that I have with State Farm over and give him a little love, and we're excited to have you back out, Coach. But let's jump right into NFL. And I want to talk a little bit what we talked about off the air, the playoffs. The playoffs are getting ready to ramp up here after Week 17, and it's a little unprecedented. The playoff structure now is going to have only one team in each conference with the bye. That'll be the top seed, and then an extra wild card. First, let me get your thoughts as a coach and as a player, the perspective on the new playoff structure.
Well, it certainly would have helped some of the teams that I played for and coached. Of course, I have 3 sisters that are always telling me this and that and this and that, and they all texted me almost at the same time when the new format came out and said, your 19 whatever team would have made the playoffs, and your 2000 and that team would have made the playoffs. And so for me, it's like more teams in, the better. I don't want to see it get carried away, but this is a good structure. COVID's been rough on everybody. The NFL's done a great job of pulling off the season. They have a few more weeks to go to see if they can make this thing happen. Of course, we have COVID popping up all over the place again this week. But that's what we're living through, Brad, here in 2020. It's been a crazy year.
Former NFL head coach Mike Tice with us, over 22 years coaching in the league, 11 years playing. Coach, I could go down memory lane for 3 hours with you, but I don't know if the entire audience would be down with my Vikings reminiscing. So let's get into some current NFL action. Let's talk about the quarterback position, because we talked a little bit about the Bears. Who would have thought the Chicago Bears, a team that you coached on the offensive line for as well, a couple weeks ago, we'd be talking playoffs with them. You can say what you want about Mitchell Trubisky, Coach Tice, but he's got a 29-20 record, and stats don't lie. So you can say what you want about Mitch. He's winning games. I said on my own podcast, which is the Rest Stop podcast, I said before the Houston Texans game, if they lose this game, blow up everything from Nagy to the GM to the quarterback and start over. They haven't lost since. So now they're looking to possibly get into the playoffs. I think they can even get in if they lose to Green Bay and Arizona loses as well. I believe they hold that tiebreaker. But the Bears have got to be feeling themselves a little bit with a couple wins in a row. I know it's not against the greatest of teams, but it's in impressive fashion. And Mitch Trubisky is playing a pretty good football right now.
He really is. And, it's really all started with Montgomery running that football and with them getting some good production out of their run game. Over the last 4 weeks, they've really stepped up their run yardage, which gives the quarterback a chance to play action, move out of that pocket a little bit. And I like where the Bears are at right now. I'm surprised, I have to say that. But we know they were very good defensively. When they have Hicks on the field, and they have those good defensive backs, and they have, of course, the big pass rusher that I was with the Raiders. When you have those, Khalil Mack, when you have those guys on the field defensively, you're in almost every single game.
And Coach, I was surprised. I reached out to you on Twitter after the Vikings went into Soldier Field and won that game, which they do very infrequently over the past decade or so. And you pretty much just said that offense stinks, not in so many words, but under Nick Foles, it wasn't that great. But they do have some weapons. Cordero Patterson can make plays when he touches the ball. You mentioned running back David Montgomery. He's been playing great football. Allen Robinson doesn't drop passes. So they've got some guys. Jimmy Graham's got in the end zone. They got some guys that can make plays. Mitch can extend plays with his legs. And if he can stay away from the poor decision-making, just if he can limit it, the Bears can hang in there.
Yeah, I agree. And right now, with the weather and some of these outdoor games, defenses are going to step to the forefront a little bit. Most of the teams that you look at that are up there with these really good winning records, not these 8-7s and 10-5s. These teams that have only the 3 losses, their defenses are playing extremely well, and their offenses are scoring points and doing great things on third down and doing great things in the red zone.
Coach, let's stay in the NFC North. The team that the Bears will be facing this Sunday in Week 17, Green Bay Packers, and Aaron Rodgers has just been what Aaron Rodgers has been for his whole career, and sometimes we lose him in the conversation because the expectation level is for him to be him, which is excellent. Statistically this year, I believe 44 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's incredible. Talk a little bit about what he means to the position and what makes him so unique, where he is just consistently fantastic. His down years, Coach, are record-setting seasons for some guys.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Aaron Rodgers. He's having a great year. There were a lot of people in the beginning of the year didn't even have him in that conversation with some of the top quarterbacks in our league. And now he's right there for an MVP, vote. But he's done a great job not turning the football over. He's done a great job of understanding the system. He's managed the line of scrimmage. And who could throw a better touch ball and a better deep ball than Aaron Rodgers when he's hot? And he's hot right now. And their defense, you got to get their hats off to their defense, yep, which I thought was a little suspect. Their defense is doing a nice job right now, and they're putting a lot of different looks out on that field and making it hard for people.
This is Straight Bet Sports. I'm Brad Restituto with former NFL head coach Mike Tice. Every Wednesday, 9 to 10 o'clock Pacific time in beautiful downtown Las Vegas, the Gorilla Cross Studios. Download the Gorilla Cross app. Check out their YouTube channel, Twitter page as well. Coach, let's stick with the quarterback position because we're coming up on Week 17. There's only 14 teams that are going to be in the dance. Everybody else is looking to next year. And a lot of questions at the quarterback position. We've seen some interchanging in Miami. The quarterback position is judged so much harsher, quicker nowadays. I want to talk about that position in detail because when you were in the league, Coach, as a player, rookies sat behind veterans for the most part and learned for a year or two before they got thrown into the fire. That's almost not the case anymore. So we're judging quarterbacks so much harsher and quicker and ready to move on. I want to get your opinion in that, and then I want to kind of run down a list of guys and talk about, are they elite? Are they top tier? And really what makes the difference between that. First of all, Coach, your opinion on the position and where it stands as a whole.
Well, the position has changed. The position, look at Russell Wilson, a smaller quarterback, baseball background, can make all the throws a tremendously great deep ball as well, can really turn that ball over. But he can move, he can run, he can get out of harm's way. Kyler Murray, another player, comes in, can get out of harm's way, can move. Mahomes, Jackson, all of these Tannehill, Wilson, Mayfield. I can keep going down the list of quarterbacks that can get out of harm's way, and that's really what the league has turned into. There's very few quarterbacks like Brady and like my boy there with the Falcons. There's Matty Ice. There's very few quarterbacks like that drop back pocket quarterback that's going to be able to take teams, all the way, unless they're just special. Of course, like the GOAT in Brady.
Coach, you played the position, so I want to talk in details. And I want to talk about not only this position, but football as a whole when we talk about technique. Because I've read an article that you've talked about technique is a little bit different. I listened to an interview today with a former NFL player that talked about coaching technique and some coaches that don't teach technique well. There's a former NFL player here locally. I won't mention his name, but I talked to him. He played wide receiver. And, Coach, I feel like I know wide receiver technique better than him in talking to him. It's of course, my resume's not there. But I want to get into detail first about technique in the quarterback position. Because we talk about guys, you mentioned the first three, Murray, Wilson, and Mahomes, all baseball guys, but all guys that can extend plays with their pockets that became quarterbacks. And you mentioned Brady. Let me tell you what I see with Brady and what I've seen a little bit with Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins this year that makes me have a little promise, but not consistent enough. And I want your rebuttal and talking about the intricacies where these guys can still succeed. What I see from Tom Brady, Coach, that makes him so successful is his ability to climb the pocket. And I see him moving either lateral or forward when that rush comes. And the guys that can take minimum sacks that aren't athletic per se quarterbacks. And I think there's something to be said about that because what I saw on tape from Kirk Cousins before this year is when he would get pressure from the outside, he would fade back and either throw the ball away or just miss a down. This year, I've seen him climb the pocket, take alleys when there's ability to run, and try to make positive plays. Can they still succeed doing that, Coach? And Tom Brady, he's so great at it. Talk a little bit about the technique detail of a quarterback that maybe can't extend plays like a Wilson, Mahomes, and a Murray.
Well, two guys you just talked about, Brady and Cousins, are both tall players. They're tall. They can see in that pocket. So that technique of climbing in the pocket that you mentioned that Brady is so good at, and he's superb at it, is because that's the style of a big, tall quarterback. That's what they're taught. That's what they grow up doing. And that's how they make their hay, and that's how they're able to make all the throws. And, Brady's so accurate. He might not be as good with the deep ball, although he hit a couple nice deep passes the last couple of weeks. But, he can make all those throws, and he's so accurate, and he can see the field because of his range and his height. And he's a GOAT. I mean, he's the best, one of the best, if not the best ever to play. But these young guys that can get out of the way and make plays out on the edge and out in space and turn their bodies in such weird ways, it's amazing. One of the things that I did, so you want to talk about technique, I was doing some work this season, back at the Hall of Fame, and we were working with some offensive linemen and some other positions. And so we watched a lot of Brownies games because there's a lot of Browns fans in that area, obviously. And Mayfield was not off to a good start earlier in the year, and he wasn't setting his feet. And he was missing, if you recall, he was missing all those throws in the end zone, and he was missing easy throws or guys wide open. And then all of a sudden, here come the Titans a couple of weeks ago, and he just tears it apart in the first half. And the one thing we all noticed, he's setting his feet. He's setting his feet, and he's following through on his throws. And he just had an outstanding day and has been playing very, very high percentage passer since. And he's a great talent. There's a reason why he won the Heisman. And there are a lot of these young, talented quarterbacks in our league right now, Brad, and that's what's taken over.
Coach, I do want to talk a little Browns with you here in a second, but let's continue just a few more guys with the quarterback discussion. A guy that fans have to be scratching their heads, Jared Goff. Year one under head coach Jeff Fisher, it's like, wow, we don't know. McVay comes in, they go to a Super Bowl. It seems that this year and the year before he may have regressed a little bit. Man, Jared Goff is one of those head scratchers. Rams fans have got to be feeling the same way. He's not one of those athletic guys that we talk about. But, Coach, I don't know about the consistency. What do you see when you see Jared Goff on tape? And what does he got to do to take that next step to get the Rams back to where they want to go?
Well, my feeling with Goff is similar to Matty Ice. You know, Matty Ice makes a lot of throws. He doesn't have great arm strength. He's got really good arm strength, and he knows where to go with the ball. Jared Goff is not going to take off and make things happen and make you change your coverages because you don't want him bolting on you when you play two-man. His accuracy bothers me. You know, I like to see him be a more accurate quarterback if you're going to be that pocket type, tall, rangy, big quarterback. I like to see more accuracy there.
Coach, last thing about the quarterbacks, some more cliche words we hear. We talk about climbing the pocket, footwork, the clock in your head that the quarterbacks have to get rid of that ball. As a fan and seeing it on my couch, I'm seeing too many guys that they don't have that sixth sense of the clock, and they're taking too many sacks as opposed to either climbing and trying to take as least damage as possible or getting rid of the ball. What is that a sixth sense, Coach? Is that coaching? Is that repetition? Why do some guys have that knack, like a Brady, a Peyton Manning, and other guys, they just seem to be sitting ducks?
Well, and all these young guys we're talking about, are just that. They're young players that still don't have that 100% grasp of that offense. That, okay, that post isn't there, that underneath route's not there, I got to dump it off to the back. That boom, boom, boom. That rhythmic reading of the defense. And so that takes time. It doesn't happen in a year. It might not happen in 2 years. And, you know, look at Josh Allen this year. Was he not the lowest rated passer a couple of years ago, and now he's the highest rated or one of the highest percentage passers in the league right now? So it takes time. But if you have the ability and you have the smarts, which all quarterbacks have to, you can't play the position without being smart, and you understand what the coordinator and what the process is, these kids with this talent, they're going to shine.
Coach, so the playoffs are right around the corner. The Kansas City Chiefs have the 1 seed locked up. I have not been very impressed, and it's hard to critique a 14-1 team. They haven't really covered the spread, I believe, in 8 or 9 weeks. I believe they're ripe to be picked off early in the playoffs. You mentioned the Bills. We'll talk about them. You mentioned the Browns also in the AFC. Quickly, I want to talk about the Browns. And I know I'll probably get some pushback from you here, but I'm going to be harsh on head coach Kevin Stefanski because everybody is in love with him. All right, Coach, they're in love with the resume. He's got the look. He's Ed Stefanski's son, who's an NFL GM. He's got the Ivy League education. He's got all of the intangibles. Coach, I see a coach that was with the Vikings organization over a decade, and they did nothing. They never made a Super Bowl. They're one of only 2 NFC teams not to make a Super Bowl appearance in their conference, in the NFC conference. One of 2 teams in 40 years not to make a Super Bowl. The Vikings and the Detroit Lions. To me, Kevin Stefanski, if he was that great, they would have pulled the trigger possibly on getting rid of Zimmer and going Stefanski. Stefanski's got all the X factors, but there was talk about coach of the year. They just lost to a 1-win Jets team. They ran the ball 15 times with no receivers. It's inexcusable. And now they're in jeopardy of missing the playoffs. if things don't go their way. So I'm not saying Stefanski's the worst coach, but in his last performance as Vikings offensive coordinator, I believe they had a total of 5 first downs. They did absolutely nothing offensively in the divisional game against San Francisco, and that's the taste he left in that organization's mouth after 10 plus years there. Now everybody within that organization is going to tell you how great he is, but I want a little pushback, Coach. Kevin Stefanski, I'm not ready to crown him as the next great big young coach. This Browns team was expected to win 9 games last year, and now they're meeting expectations, but we're ready to crown Stefanski the next big thing.
Well, I don't even want to talk about whether he's done a great job or not done a great job, because if they don't beat the Steelers this week, then I think he's done a crap job because they didn't get in the playoffs and they kind of melted a little bit. So losing that game last week and throwing that ball around there with all those receivers on COVID, it was totally baffling to me, and probably a lot of the Browns fans that I know back in Canton, Ohio. And it was very shocking, to be quite frank. And, they had injuries up front in their offensive line, which makes it harder to pass protect. You have no receivers. So that was a bad deal. But they can make all that right. They can make all that right if they come out this week, even though Roethlisberger's not playing, which might not be a bad thing. The Browns can make everything right and make everybody happy if they beat the Steelers this week and get in the playoffs.
They can, but will they? And I'll be interested to see that. And as a lifelong, I've denounced my allegiance to the Vikings this year, but as a former Vikings fan, I want to see them fail because I can't. I just can't do it, Coach. Anyway, I want to talk about stick with the playoffs. We'll go Bills here because we're talking AFC right now, playoffs with former NFL coach Mike Tice. You mentioned Josh Allen. Buffalo is my new favorite team, Coach. I am so high on them. Sean McDermott, for my money, is as good as it gets as a head football coach. Not a lot of people talk about him. They really hit the lotto with that Stephon Diggs trade. I didn't know how it was going to work out. He's having a career year statistically. Josh Allen, a career year. The Bills are playing really good football. They've won 4 in a row at least. And they're playing, you talk about teams getting hot going in the playoffs. The Bills are as hot as it gets. And for my money, Coach, I'm picking them to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. But talk about a little bit their coaching staff. You're familiar with Leslie Frazier, defensive coordinator, Sean McDermott, and then the players. The defense as well is starting to play good football at this time of year for Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm really close friends with Bob Babbitt, the linebacker coach. We worked together with the Browns under Lovie Smith. Bobby Johnson, their offensive line coach. It's his first go-around in the NFL with his own room. He was the tight end coach with the Raiders when I was with Jack Del Rio with the Raiders. Really fond of those guys. Talk to them every week. I think they've got a very good football team, an excellent head coach, a great organization. If you watch the Bills play like I do every week, because I am a Bills fan as well.
Coach from Central Islip. He's got a little affiliation with the state of New York.
Yeah, my sister went to U of B, University of Buffalo, and just retired to Florida like 3 months ago and spent her whole adult life in Buffalo. So I heard about the Bills my whole adult life from my sister Sheila. But let me say this. When you watch them play, Brad, they're playing for each other. They're genuinely happy when each other or each of the guys makes a play. There's a lot of love there, and there's a lot to be said in organized sports when players and people are pulling for each other, and they mean it when it's genuine, and that's what I see when I watch the Bills on television. Coach,
I gotta give a little shout out to your sister Sheila, because one of my best friends, his name's Alex Seppi. He's from Batavia, New York. Went to Notre Dame High School, got inducted into the Notre Dame High School Hall of Fame. Also, he was a 2-sport player, baseball and basketball at the University of Buffalo. So this was back probably in the early 80s. So maybe he ran into your sister at one point in time back there. But Coach, before we wrap it up with you, because I appreciate your time, I can't help myself. I've got to go down memory lane a little bit with you. And to give you a little bit of my background, I grew up in Central Florida, but we had a group of guys that were big Vikings fans. I ran into him as a 17-year-old kid going into an Orlando ale house when they had DirecTV was first starting to get rolled out. So I met a group of Vikings fans, and we became close for life. And we would meet every Sunday to watch the Vikings games. And I remember the 98 heartbreak of the Gary Anderson miss. You were on that coaching staff. That was the first heartbreak. But I remember distinctively, and all my Vikings buddies will remember this, around 2002. I was so fired up, Coach, when they were giving you a hard time, talking about you on the hot seat, and it was shortly after your Green Bay press conference where you talked about the heart being ripped out, and that still gives me chills because it resonates so much with me. Loving the game, being a former player myself, and I felt like I was in that press conference with you. And of course, it's interesting. It rubs off because talking about coaching tree, Denny Green had a memorable press conference. But Coach, here's what happened. I walked into the ale house that Sunday with my boys, and I made a handmade shirt. It was a white T-shirt, and I wrote in black pen, "No Tice, no Moss, no fan." And we would all wear our jerseys, and I wore that into the ale house, and I proudly stood on my stool, and I was bagging for you, Coach. I'm like, do not get rid of my guy, Tice. Coach, not many people go into Green Bay as a coach and beat the Packers in Lambeau. And one of your Viking squads did that. And there was a lot of promise. And real quick, your quick opinion on going back to your coaching days. I thought things changed with Dante Culpepper when he got that back injury, because that Vikings squad with Culpepper and Moss, even though they couldn't get over the hump, man, it was fun to watch. That offense was dynamic. Just take me back a little bit to that time, and for you, did that change Dante's career? Because it wasn't the same from that point forward.
Well, we had a great offense. We ran the ball. Scott Lanahan and the staff did a tremendous job, and just going back to that Packer game in the playoffs, nobody thought we were going to win, and we beat them pretty good actually, and had 2 touchdown passes to Randy Moss on audibles on the line of scrimmage. And our staff did a great job of studying their linebackers and seeing when they were blitzing, they were flopping the 2 linebackers. So when they did that, we had a check with a little hand clap, and we threw the ball deep to Randy Moss, and he scored 2 touchdowns. And of course, on one of them, he faked the moon to the fans, as you guys all remember out there.
Yeah, Coach, sorry. I had to give you that fanboy moment for a minute. I've been waiting my whole life to share that story about me making my homemade shirt. No Tice, no Moss, no fan. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time for joining us here on Gorilla Cross Radio Live, Straight Bet Sports. I got so much more I'd love to hit with you. I'd love to have you back on my podcast, the Rest Stop Podcast, and I'd love to reminisce a little more about coaching and the state of the NFL and where coaching and players go from here. But I appreciate a little of your time, Coach. Thank you so much. I hope I can get you again.
I love it. Great job. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it.
Have a great day. That's former NFL head coach Mike Tice, 11-year NFL veteran, 22 years in the coaching ranks. And some of the boys here in Vegas, Quan, some of the boys, they're a little familiar with Coach Tice, and we know his son Nate is out here now. And we hope to track him down when he gets back in Vegas once all this COVID stuff kind of passes. But I want to thank Quan. I want to thank Jose V and Rob G for letting me fill in on Straight Bet Sports tonight, every Wednesday, 9 to 10 o'clock Pacific time. Make sure you download the Gorilla Cross Radio app, YouTube, Twitter, Gorilla Cross Radio. Beautiful, beautiful studio Quan has out here in downtown Las Vegas, and we're live here. And we're going to get right into NFL and continue to talk NFL because playoffs are right around the corner, and we're going to get into some picks week 17. There's not a lot on the line as far as betting goes because it's so tough to handicap when you've got so many guys sitting. A lot of coaches are still kind of keeping it close to the vest on who will and won't play. So you kind of got to go on your gut and maybe go back and some revisionist history and see how these coaches play situations like this. Now, a lot of these coaches don't have tons of scenarios where they've been in positions to rest guys, but a guy like Andy Reid, like Mike Tomlin, you can go back and check and see how they've handled these situations and give yourself an idea of what players may or may not sit. We're going to start off in the NFC East with a game that has some playoff implications, and the Dallas Cowboys are traveling to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Giants. The Cowboys sit as a 1.5-point favorite in this matchup. And my breakdown for everyone listening, and Jose, Rob, Quan, the New York Giants had a spot earlier in this year where they were playing good football. Joe Judge was getting some talk of Coach of the Year as the Giants had been competitive for the most part of the season, even after losing star running back Saquon Barkley. But it has not gone their way here in the past 4 weeks, especially since Daniel Jones had that lower leg injury, and he's just not right. And they kind of decided they're looking more towards next year. So that being said, I'm going to give a lean towards Dallas, even though these division games, which week 17 is pretty much all divisional matchups, can be very close. And we'll talk about some of those divisional matchups that typically are closer than others. I think Dallas can cover this short number here. I don't love the way Andy Dalton's played, but I love the receiving talent. And I think the offensive line, and I think Zeke Elliott got some confidence last week. Don't forget, they were down early in that game to Philadelphia, double digits, and they were able to come back. They made some fourth down stops. They made some plays, but they got a little stagnant there in the second half. But I think Dallas, playing for their playoff lives, I think they can win this game on the road because I love the receivers and I love what their running game can do. Their defense has been gouged at times this year, probably statistically the worst defense against the run, but you've got a healthy Sean Lee. Randy Gregory, we're not talking about it. Remember first-round pick Randy Gregory was out of the NFL a couple years, Nebraska product. He's starting to flash now, folks, if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan or if you're betting this game. And Gregory was certainly in the stat sheet and on the broadcast last week as he was making life for Jalen Hurts very hectic. But not only Jalen Gregory, Lawrence, Sean Lee's healthy, the rookie Diggs in the secondary is a playmaker. So you've got some notable guys that can make some plays. I think that'll be enough for Dallas to win the game, cover the spread, and get into the playoffs. AFC North for the next matchup, the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Cleveland to take on the Browns. We talked a little bit with Coach Tice about the Browns. It's not that I hate Kevin Stefanski or I don't think he can be a successful coach. I think a combination of people being too high on him and forgetting who the Browns are really kind of jading people's perception on what the Cleveland Browns are. They're always going to be the Cleveland Browns until they're not. And what I mean by that is I think Stefanski, if he wants to get out of the Browns, what Browns fans and what he expects, it's going to have to be quite the overhaul. And you're probably scratching your head and saying, well, we've got to 9 or 10 wins in his first year. How much overhaul do you need to do? Well, you're going to find out when Cleveland either loses this game as a 9.5-point favorite outright to a Pittsburgh team who stinks and are not playing a lot of players, or if that doesn't happen when they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs and then the same thing happens year after year, or they don't make the playoffs, because I can guarantee you Baltimore is going to get better and Miami's going to get better. Other teams are going to get better while Cleveland will be hedging on staying the same or slightly trying to get better. We can get into more detail about that later, but I'm going to take the Steelers plus the 9.5. I don't think the Browns are ready to take that step. I don't think Stefanski should be crowned yet. And last week proves my point, which I've been talking about for well over a month on my podcast, the Rest Stop Podcast, which you can listen to every Tuesday and Thursday, 9 to 10 o'clock Pacific time. Download the Twitch app or search LandryFootball.com, and you can see the Rest Stop underneath there, along with my Twitter, at Brad the Believer, which you can see right down there. But look, the Cleveland Browns, they're going to have to prove it to me consistently. And that's going to start on Sunday against Pittsburgh at home. They're a 9.5-point favorite. I'm going to take the Steelers, which I usually don't do because I'm not a Steelers fan. I think the Steelers will get knocked in the first round of the playoffs unless they happen to face the Browns, which I'll get into that maybe before we end the show and talk a little playoff perspectives. But the next game on the board, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Jets, who all of a sudden have won 2 in a row, they travel to New England to take on the Patriots, who are free falling as quick as you can see. The Patriots still managed to be a 3-point favorite in this matchup. Look, the Patriots just aren't any good this year. It doesn't matter who the coach is. They're just not, they don't have the talent. They don't have the health. And the Jets winning 2 in a row. I'll take the Jets +3 and possibly to win 4 in a row. Next matchup, NFC North. Minnesota Vikings will travel to Detroit to take on the Lions. The Vikings are pretty banged up. We talked about how bad their defense is. Star running back Dalvin Cook will not be playing in the game Sunday. His father has passed away here in the last 48 hours, and he'll be back in South Florida tending to family issues there. So it looks like you would think Alexander Madison, but he's been kind of banged up. The backup running back that played college ball at Boise State, he's been banged up for quite a few weeks. So it's going to be Alex Boone, I believe, that'll get to start for the Vikings at running back. Alex Boone played his college ball at the University of Cincinnati, and he got some spot time last year. He's very explosive, and if the Vikings can block a little bit, he may have a good day. But unfortunately for the Vikings as well, left tackle Riley Reif is now in COVID protocol, and he'll be missing this game. So the Vikings are going to be a little thin on the offensive line, very thin at running back. That being said, they're going to have to rely on Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen. And where I loved the Vikings to win earlier in the week with all of these injuries, they are not a deep team. And Detroit's not good either, but you're talking about 6.5 points in Detroit. Detroit was awful, but let's not do recency bias and take a team for what we saw last. The Vikings are in dire depth issues right now. They don't have a lot. They're going to need Kirk Cousins to carry them. I never liked that proposition. Give me Detroit plus 6.5. NFC South matchup in the next game. The Atlanta Falcons travel to Tampa Bay to take on the Bucs. The Bucs trying to maneuver position in the playoffs. They're hoping if they win, they take on the division winner in the NFC East. So the Bucs are a 6.5 point favorite. Another divisional matchup. I hate the Falcons, but the Falcons have been competitive lately. So I'll go ahead begrudgingly and take the Falcons plus 6.5. AFC North matchup next on the board. The Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. And by the way, all of these lines are from William Hill, the William Hill Sportsbook is where you can find these numbers. The Baltimore Ravens playing for everything. Cincinnati, those won a couple games in a row. They're going to be a home 12-point underdog to Baltimore. I don't like laying big numbers, but I'm going to here because I can't believe Cincinnati with backup quarterbacks and shaky offensive line. I just think Baltimore wants that momentum going into the playoffs. So even though it's a divisional matchup, since he's been playing decent, I'll take the big number. Give me Baltimore minus 12. Next matchup, AFC East. The Miami Dolphins travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. The Bills pretty much have the 2 seed locked up. If they want to secure it, they'll go out and play and win the game on Sunday. But Miami's playing for everything. They're playing for their playoff lives. And look, Brian Flores deserves probably to be the front runner for Coach of the Year as a team that was talking about tanking for Tua last year. Started the season as the worst 3-game stretch I think a lot of us have ever seen. Weren't sure if they were going to win a game. Ended up drafting in the top 10, top 5, I believe, top 8. But quite the bounce back and the improvement this year under second year Brian Flores. Now the Dolphins are talking playoffs, and if they win this game, they're in. Buffalo's at home, a 2-point favorite, and that line's only 2 because we don't know what Sean McDermott's going to do about sitting the starters. I imagine you'll see Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs for a quarter. I definitely think Diggs will be out of there as quick as anybody, and Josh Allen shortly thereafter. So Matt Barkley will get the nod after they pull Josh Allen. I like the buttons Flores has pressed. He's taken the philosophy, we're going to start the young guy, and if it's not going well, we're going to go to the bullpen. I like that. I like that you keep going there, and if Tua plays with his pants on fire and he's lighting it up, he stays in. If they've got to play from behind, put Fitzpatrick in. A lot of people don't agree with that. They say go one or the other. I like this philosophy. I'm down with it. It's tough. I'm going with the assessment, divisional game, and the Josh Allen will be pulled early. Give me the Dolphins to make the playoffs. Give me the Dolphins plus 2. AFC South, this game doesn't mean too much, especially to Jacksonville, as they're locked in for the number 1 overall pick and more than likely going to draft Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence. They travel to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Look, there's a few teams battling for that last wild card spot, or all the wild card spots in the AFC. Indianapolis, Miami, Cleveland, and Baltimore. And Indianapolis, a big favorite here, 14-point favorites. I'm going to lay the big number, even though Jacksonville beat Indy in week 1, their only win of the season. Jacksonville's packed it in. They're ready for next year. The coaching staff's ready for next year. Indy trying to get in the playoffs. Give me Indy minus 14. Next matchup, NFC North, the Chicago Bears. We talked about them with Coach Tice. They're looking to win and get into the playoffs. They're at home as a 5.5-point underdog. And if you go on the last thing you saw with Green Bay, they were in inches of snow at Lambeau Field, putting a waxing to the behind of the Tennessee Titans as they really messed them up. And Aaron Rodgers looked fantastic. That defense looked great. And I'm not going to go recency bias. I'm going to ride the Mitch train. I don't know if Chicago wins, but I say they keep it close. Give me the Bears plus 5.5. Next matchup, AFC South, Tennessee Titans. I think they've locked up the division. They have. They'll travel to Houston to take on the Texans. Texans a 7.5-point underdog. And the Texans, they lost their last game to Cincinnati, which is a terrible loss. That being said, have they packed it in? I got to imagine Tennessee may play guys. Mike Vrabel, former player, New England Patriot, he may be one of those guys. Look, we looked terrible last week. We need to get that taste out of our mouth and probably play his guys. Deshaun Watson, it's tough to go against him, but it's a divisional matchup. And usually in these divisional matchups, man, Houston stayed within 7 of Indy a couple weeks ago. Give me Tennessee. I think Tennessee gets right. I'm going to lay the big number, minus 7.5 with Tennessee. NFC South matchup next on the board. The New Orleans Saints travel to Carolina to take on the Panthers. The Panthers, who were competitive most of the year, gotten beat pretty good here lately, although they had a nice win against the Washington football team here recently. The New Orleans Saints, Drew Brees, Taysom Hill. I like the depth on New Orleans, but on the road, I'm going to go ahead and take a flyer on Carolina at home, plus 6.5. New Orleans they're still playing for something. If New Orleans wins and a couple other things happen, Seattle loses, Green Bay loses, they could have the number 1 seed. But I'm going to go with the dog here. Give me Carolina plus 6.5. Next matchup, AFC West. The Chargers travel to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs. Chiefs expected to sit a lot of guys. Kansas City plus 3.5. So they're the underdog in this one. Chargers have not proven enough to me that they can beat anybody by any amount of points. They had a team they were better than last week. They only won by 3. Give me Kansas City plus 3.5. NFC West, next matchup, Seattle. Hoping to get some help and a win to lock up the 1 seed. They travel in a divisional matchup to San Francisco. 49ers plus 6. And this is the one where the NFC West play the closest divisional games, I think, out of anybody in the season, especially the Niners. Every time I think the Niners are dead or they've got too many injuries, they got a divisional game where they're an underdog and they win outright. I don't know that they win outright here, but I think they cover that number. Give me the Niners plus 6. Our Las Vegas Raiders travel to Denver to take on the Broncos at Mile High. No playoff implications in this matchup. The Raiders are a 2.5-point road favorite. I think Denver stinks. Drew Lock stinks. He's not going to start another game after this one for the Denver Broncos as far as I'm concerned. Vic Fangio should be lucky that he's going to have another year as a coach. Jerry Jeudy, first-round pick, had 4 or 5 drops on the year or 3 drops last week, and he's commenting on other guys' situations on Twitter, whatever this guy's doing. Juju Smith, Schuster dancing. Dude, worry about your quarterback and what you're doing in Denver because you're not doing a whole lot. And you got to worry about your game. Tweet about your game. Your team stinks. They're uncompetitive in primetime matchups during the holidays. You win a big comeback one and then you lay an egg. You can't even field quarterbacks in one of your games this year because you guys can't get your act together and do what you're supposed to do as professional athletes. Give me a break. Tweet about your own team and what you're doing when you stink and when you're a top first-round pick and you've done nothing. You've got guys like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson drafted after you that are crushing it, that are playing way better. Dude, you need to be not tweeting anything and looking in the mirror and saying, I need to get my game right because I ain't doing nothing. And Drew Lock ain't doing nothing either. But how can you impact the game? You're not impacting it by dropping balls. So I hate to be so hard on Jerry Jeudy, but the Broncos stink. And they need to get it together because Drew Lock ain't the guy. So you better figure out a way to move up in the draft and get one of these quarterbacks, because you're going to need an overhaul. You went all in on this year's draft, Denver Broncos fans. You went all in on Drew Lock being the guy. We're going to put Jerry Jeudy around him, KJ Hamler, which I like from Penn State. You've already got Cortland Sutton, which I think he's been hurt this year, but he's a first-round pick. You've got Noah Fant. You've got all the weapons, the young weapons around you. You better get you a quarterback in there, or somebody's going to find a way to get rid of John Elway because you've got the young guys on that offense. You've got some talent on defense. Bradley Chubb, top pick. Von Miller, who's been hurt, but he'll be back. So look, next year, if the Broncos aren't hovering around 8 wins in a tough AFC, people are going to be losing their jobs. And Drew Lock's the first guy because he's not the guy that's going to get it done. And if anybody thinks that, they're going to be fired because Drew Lock ain't getting it done. He's not going to get it done. And if he starts another game for Denver without injuries bearing, people will be fired because of it. Next game on the matchup, another NFC West showdown. The Arizona Cardinals travel to LA to take on the Rams. Jared Goff had thumb surgery. He'll be out. John Walford, I believe former Wake Forest product, played a little bit in the AAFL or XFL, one of those two. Young guy, took the place of Blake Bortles as the backup quarterback of the Rams. They like this guy. They like this Walford guy. I think I like him too. I've seen a little bit of action, not tons. I'll go back and look at some of the tapes some more. But the Rams will be without Cooper Kupp, which is important. I don't know what the running back situation looks like health-wise. I think Henderson got hurt last week, and Cam Akers, he's been in and out of the lineup. I like Cam Akers, former Florida State running back. Man, but it's tough. It's tough when you don't have one of your best receivers, Cooper Kupp. You don't have your starting quarterback. But I'm going to give McVay the benefit of the doubt a little bit longer. As boy genius young coach. I told you how I feel about some of these young next guys that we're crowning. McVay, Stefanski. I think the best of the group is Kyle Shanahan. He's proven enough to me. He's actually been to a Super Bowl. McVay has as well. But McVay has unexcusable losses on his record. You can't lose to the one-win Jets. And look, it's just disgusting. You can't have that happen when you have an Aaron Donald on your team and you have an offense like you have in LA and they can't score against the Jets. So that being said, I think Goff could be the problem. So I'm pointing the finger at Goff before I'm ready to jump off the McVay bandwagon. And I think you'll see a little bit this week when Walford's in there. And I think some Rams fans are going to look at the Rams dashing the hopes of the Cardinals' playoff chances as a 3-point underdog in SoFi Stadium with no Cooper Kupp. And I think they beat Arizona. I think Walford plays well. And then there's some grumblings about Walford being the guy. I think that's what plays out this Sunday. We'll see if I'm right. And if it does, is Goff's thumb surgery going to keep him out of the playoff game next week? So that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow. If you're a football fan, if you're a Rams fan, if you're following the playoffs, follow this game closely because it's going to have a lot of interesting storylines leading into the playoffs for Rams fans and for NFC playoff bettors or backers as you're seeing the Rams first round matchup with possibly no Jared Goff and possibly no Cooper Kupp, as that could string out a couple weeks. So that's going to be an interesting one. I say the Rams get the outright upset win. Final game on the list will be the primetime game tomorrow. It'll be this weekend. It'll be a primetime game this weekend. Last one on the books for Sunday. The Washington football team will travel to Philly to take on the Eagles. Washington playing for their playoff lives. And Dwayne Haskins, released by the Washington football team earlier this week. Head coach Ron Rivera was on Sirius XM, I believe channel 88, NFL radio, talking about that decision. And he said he talked to owner Dan Snyder, and Dan Snyder was on board with the decision, and it was time. And look, Ron Rivera is no nonsense. He came in there, and he let expectations be known on how he was going to run this team. The Washington football team has stunk, and Dan Snyder gave him that power. And he said, it's time. We need to move on from Dwayne Haskins. You don't really have a healthy Alex Smith. And so Taylor Heineke is going to get to start, I believe, this Sunday for Washington. If you're unfamiliar with Taylor Heineke, he got his start with the Minnesota Vikings on the practice squad. The offensive coordinator of that team when Taylor Heineke was a Viking was Norv Turner, and his son Scott Turner was the quarterback coach. They moved to Carolina under head coach Ron Rivera, and they took those same positions. So Taylor Heineke played a little quarterback for the Carolina Panthers and Ron Rivera, and actually got some playing time last year. So that transition, that relationship over to the Washington football team, and Taylor Heineke will probably be the Washington football team starter for the last game in week 17 and give Washington an opportunity to make the playoffs. Now, that's not 100%. Alex Smith still could play, but it looks like Taylor Heineke will get the nod. I liked him a lot. I thought the Vikings should have pushed for him to be the backup quarterback at one time. He did not do as much with his opportunities in Carolina as I would have liked to have seen, but he's got some experience, so it's going to be interesting to watch, and that's probably why this line isn't that big. I know Philly has nothing to play for, but look, these guys got names on the back of their jerseys. These coaches, these players are playing for their jobs, not only next season, but right now, and they're putting this on tape. They're not going to get their tails blown off the field. That being said, Philly's got a lot of pride, the city, the state. I like Jalen Hurts. They made some plays last week, and I'm not ready to jump back on the Taylor Heineke bandwagon as I'm familiar with him, more familiar with him than most. So he played his college ball at Old Dominion. But I'm going to go Philly here. I'm going to go Jalen Hurts. I'm going to go Philly. I know that defensive line of Washington is stout, and they're going to be ready for that read option of Hurts. But I think Philly has a little pride, and I think they find a way to get a win against a third-string quarterback. So, look, that wraps up our NFL pick segment. I'm going to give you a best bet here. Jose and Rob G didn't message me their best bets, so I'll give you mine. And as I'm kind of perusing the board here, there's not a lot that sticks out for me, but I'm going to go out on a limb, guys. I know it doesn't sound good, but I talked myself into it, and I talked you into it. I'm going to go Rams +3 at home. Rams +3 is my best bet against Arizona with the backup quarterback and no Cooper Kupp. Quan, do we got a couple more minutes or we got to wrap it up? All right, we got a couple more minutes. that being said, I'm going to get into some New Year's Eve basketball, and I'm going to go over the games on the list and the spread because I love NBA basketball. I know Quan loves NBA, and some of the listeners out there, big NBA fans. And look, the season has got off to a roaring start. I love NBA basketball. I'm a little pissed as a bettor the other night that 3 games in, the Brooklyn Nets decided to sit everybody. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, come on, man. You're 3 games in. And that being said, we're in such a pussified world. These guys, I'm not buying it. If you can't even suit up 3 games in because you got to rest, I'm not trusting come playoff time that you're going to be healthy enough to beat the dogs. Look, who would have thought Miami, even in the bubble, were going to make the finals? Nobody. But you know who the dog is? Jimmy Butler. And he elevated the play of those young guys. So when the going gets tough and a Karis LeVert, a Joe Harris, those backups got to look in Kyrie Irving's eyes and Kevin Durant. Now, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are champions, but people don't want to know what you did a decade ago, 3 years ago. They want to know what you've done for me lately. And as a Brooklyn Net, nobody's done anything. Neither of them have done nothing. So if I'm Karis LeVert and I carried Brooklyn last year to some playoff wins in that bubble, you better show me that you're going to step up and take us to the finals. And by having to watch you sit after 3 games, there's a little bit of me inside my head that's saying they don't have the dog in them. We'll see how it plays out. Look, Kyrie doesn't have LeBron anymore. KD does not have the cushion of Steph Curry, of Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson because those guys are bad boys. And so Durant never did it on his own. Now, we could have differing opinions on that, but look, 3 games in sitting, I don't buy it. Now, they won a tough game tonight against Atlanta. I think that game may have went to overtime. If it didn't, Brooklyn won a close game. The game was in the 140s. But look, they've moved up their roster a little bit. They're playing some good ball. But look, New Year's Eve, guys. This is Thursday, tomorrow. This is how the slate looks. The Cleveland Cavaliers travel to Indiana to take on the Pacers. On the William Hill app, the Pacers are sitting as a 7-point favorite. The Cavs started off 3-0, and I rode them the other night against the Knicks, and the Knicks beat them pretty handily. But the Cavs only scored 80-something points. Not enough for me. And I like the Cavs, but the Pacers are a more complete team. I'm going to take the big number. Give me the Pacers -7. The Bulls, this is a home and home because the Bulls beat the Wizards last night in Chicago as an underdog. So they're traveling to Washington to take on the Wizards. Wizards a 5.5-point favorite. This is interesting because this Wizards team on paper, they have not won a game yet this year, but on paper, they've got some talent with Brad Beal, Russell Westbrook. They got the young guy, Ajita. They've got Troy Brown Jr. They got more talent on paper, but the Bulls, there's just something there with Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen. A lot of people not talking about him because he hasn't stayed in the lineup, and the Bulls stink. Wendell Carter, young guy trying to stay healthy. I'm going to take the Bulls as a road underdog. I'm changing my mind because tonight, that home and home where the Bucks blasted Miami the other night by 50-something points, setting a record. Well, the Heat came back and won the night. So it's that revenge factor. It's the ping pong. So the Bulls beat the Wizards the other night. I'll take the Wizards -5.5. Next game, the Sixers travel to Orlando. Orlando's undefeated on the year. The Magic are 4-0. They look pretty good. I'm gonna ride with the team that's hot. Give me Orlando +3 against Doc Rivers and the new look Sixers. Orlando's got some leadership from Markelle Fultz. Rookie Cole Anthony's contributed. Nikola Vucevic is as steady as they come in the middle for Orlando, and hopefully they can build on it. 4-0, make it 5-0. Give me the Magic +3. Sacramento, really nice win last night against Denver, 125-110. Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, my main man Spencer the Wiz, who you can find with me every Tuesday and Thursday on the Rest Stop podcast. He loves Tyrese Halliburton. He was his steal of the draft, and he's gotten some significant minutes with the Sacramento Kings, and they've got a winning record. They won by 10 against a playoff team. They're going to be 4-point dogs on the road against Houston. Houston has not proven to me yet that they're ready to gel. I think they're still missing Boogie Cousins and John Wall with his COVID. I imagine they're expecting them to be back in this game if they're 4-point favorites. I think, gosh, man, Sacramento is so up and down, but I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say they're gonna run hot even on the road. Give me the Kings +4. The Knicks won 2 straight, couple upset wins. They beat the Bucks, which was, man, if you had your money on that money line, you were sitting fat there. And they beat the Cavs the other night. They traveled to Toronto to take on the Raptors. The Raptors have not won a game. They're 9-point favorites. Toronto, of course, playing their games this year in Tampa as the COVID lockdown has seen the Raptors lose their home court or home advantage over in Toronto, even though we don't have fans. But Toronto, they're not going to keep losing games the rest of the year. This is a spot where they get right, especially after the Knicks have won 2 straight. The Raptors get right here. They get their first win of the season. I'll lay the 9. Give me Toronto. Pelicans travel to OKC to take on the Thunder. The Thunder are decimated from what they were last year. No Billy Donovan, no Chris Paul. You've got Lou Dort in the starting lineup, Mike Muscala, some other guys that I've watched, some young guys. They're competitive, though, and the Pelicans are super inconsistent. I love their talent. I love Brandon Ingram. I'm been Alonzo Ball backer, and there's a lot of guys that have differing opinions. His shot definitely looks smoother this year. He's got to put it in the bucket more. Zion Williamson is everything that he has been advertised to be when he's healthy. He can pretty much score at will. He's just got to work on that free throw game and the touch. We know that they've got the talent, but they just have not shown it. They were within 2 against the Suns after the first period last night, and then they couldn't do anything and ended up losing by almost 40. You figured they got to bounce back from that on the road, but Oklahoma City has played tough. I don't think the Pelicans cover. I'll take OKC +5. Final game on New Year's Eve. Phoenix Suns travel to Utah to take on the Jazz. The Jazz have not been very consistent. They won a game by 1 point the other night. I believe it was last night against a team they should have beat. The team's flipping my mind right now, but definitely a team they were better than. They won by 1 point. That being said, it's always tough to go into Utah and win. So I'll give the Jazz one more chance, even though the Suns are playing really good ball. We know what the Suns did in the bubble. They didn't lose a game. Monty Williams had them clicking on all cylinders. Now with Chris Paul in that lineup for the Phoenix, they got an opportunity to sneak into the Western Conference playoffs. But I'm going to go the Jazz here at home, -3.5. So as we're wrapping it up here, I want to wish everybody listening out there and thank everyone for listening. I want to wish everybody happy holidays as we're coming into New Year's Eve tomorrow. And you can check out my work, what I do outside of here. The Rest Stop podcast, and every Tuesday and Thursday, 9 to 10 o'clock. You can see that, download the Twitch app or follow my YouTube channel, Brad the Believer, and that's on all my social media platforms. And download the Gorilla Cross app, Gorilla Cross Radio. The call-in number 702-608-3259 as we're live downtown in Las Vegas. I want to thank Jose V. I want to thank Juan and everybody for giving me an opportunity here tonight. Have a happy holidays and happy New Year, and we're out. We'll see you next time.
Hello.
Hey, Jose.
Brad, trying to end the show without me, my man.
Oh, man. Well, you didn't tell me you were jumping in.
Quan didn't tell you I called in, but look, man, I just want to say great show. Appreciate you jumping on tonight, man. Good stuff with Mike Tice. But I had to call you in and give us our picks, man.
There you go.
Rob finally hit me up. I was waiting on him. I'm taking Buffalo. Give me Buffalo -2. I think they close it out strong. I don't see Miami doing anything in this game. Call me crazy. Rob likes the Bears +5. I don't know why.
I like it, Rob.
Those are both of our picks this week.
I like it. Hey, Jose, thanks for letting me sit in on Straight Bet Sports. That's Jose V. He's the man of the show every Wednesday, 9 to 10 o'clock, and his sidekick, Rob G. Jose, you have a happy New Year, my man. I appreciate you letting me fill in for you tonight.
You too, brother. Greatly appreciate you. And again, make sure you check out Brad's podcast as well, The Rest Stop with Brad Restituto. Check it out, guys, every Tuesday and Thursday night. Brad, appreciate you, man. Finish it up, and I'll talk to you soon. Don't forget our sponsor segment. Let everybody know who we're being brought to you by tonight, my man. Stay safe and happy holidays.
We'll do it. That's Jose V. And Joshua LaFond, Real Estate. So that's who we're brought to you by. And I appreciate everybody here at Gorilla Cross Studios. Make sure you download that app. Go to the YouTube page, Twitter channel. And this is Straight Bet Sports every Wednesday night, 9 to 10 o'clock. I'm Brad Restituto. Follow me on Twitter at Brad the Believer. Everybody have a happy New Year. We're looking forward to 2021. Enjoy your sports going into the new year, and have a great night, everyone.
We are brought to you by Joshua LaFond with Simply Vegas Real Estate, a realtor here to help educate current and future Las Vegas locals on selling and investing in real estate. You're probably asking yourself, educate. Yes, there's a surprising amount of adults that when it comes to real estate, don't know the right questions to ask, don't know where to start, and think they need a lot of cash to buy a house in Nevada, which simply isn't true. So Josh has decided to make it his responsibility to teach his clients what they need to know, and equally important, what they need to ask to help ensure making their home ownership dreams a true reality. So make sure you call or text Joshua LaFond today at 702-813-0533. This has been another paid advertisement from Joshua LaFond with Simply Vegas Real Estate. Make sure you give them a call, 702-813-0533.